going inside the issues of our community. This is Local 12 Newsmakers.
I, Bob Taft,
do solemnly swear
that
I shall faithfully and honestly discharge the duties of the office of Governor of the State of Ohio, and I shall preserve,
When Bob Taft took the oath of office as the 67th governor of the state of Ohio in January 1999, 5 generations of Tafts had served in public office. In the 1860s, Taft's great-great-grandfather, a founder of the Republican Party, served as President Grant's Attorney General. His son, William Howard, is still the only American to ever serve as both President and Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. His son, Robert, made his mark in the United States Senate, where he became known as Mr. Republican and was a contender for the Republican presidential nomination on several occasions. His son, Robert Jr., ultimately followed his father to the U.S. Senate after years in Ohio's legislature. The only major office that had escaped the grasp of the Tafts was the governor of Ohio, until Bob Taft won in 1998.
Bob Taft.
Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. Since Bob Taft first took the oath of office in 1999, much has happened. In 8 days, on January the 8th, Bob Taft will relinquish the governor's seat to Democratic Governor-elect Ted Strickland. This morning, Governor Taft joins me here on Newsmakers. Welcome back to Cincinnati. Welcome to Newsmakers.
Dan, thanks a lot. It's nice to be home with you.
I know that you knew former President Ford a little bit yourself, but I suspect your father probably knew him very well. Is that true?
Yeah, my dad was very close to Gerald Ford. In fact, my dad was on the JV football team at Yale, and Ford was his coach when Ford was at Yale Law School. And then, of course, Dad served under Minority Leader Gerald Ford in the U.S. House of Representatives. So they were very close friends, and I got to know Ford through my father. I was at some campaign events with him, and always had enormous respect for him, his strength, his calm, and he certainly did the country, I think, a great service when he took over after Watergate.
In a all but impossible situation, served with real dignity.
Real dignity and strength, and brought, I think, a calm and a composure to the country that we desperately needed at that time. And I think he'll be remembered for that, and should be.
You know that in your situation, the issue that's before us, and we're taping this on Thursday, and I want to ask this question straight up front. Yesterday, the Ohio Supreme Court reprimanded you. This was a follow-up from when you were in court back in August of 2005, and you had to plead no contest. What's your reaction at this point?
Well, Dan, obviously, I made a mistake. It wasn't intentional. It was an oversight. It wasn't something that was dishonest. I discovered the mistake myself. I came forward, I disclosed the information, I took responsibility, and I paid the penalty. So I regret, obviously, the mistake that I didn't disclose all the gifts I was supposed to, but it was inadvertent, and I think I handled it in the right way. I came forward, I took responsibility, and then I moved on. And in fact, that same year, last year, we got some good things done. We got our tax reform plan through to cut our income taxes in Ohio, a better business tax climate, and also we got the Jobs for Ohio bond initiative passed by the voters. So it was a very tough year in a lot of respects, but at the same time, we also were able to get some important things done for the people of the state, and I hope that will be remembered as well.
You know, I've been around politics long enough, government offices. I have to ask, I know you took the responsibility for it, and you had to stand up in court.
Right.
But really, isn't this sloppy staff work of not reporting these sorts of golf outing things?
Well, we just hadn't established a system, and certainly I'm responsible for that. Some of my staff may be responsible, but the fact is we didn't establish a system to make sure that we reported all these events that were gifts in excess of $75. So the buck stops here. The governor takes responsibility, and I think when something like this happens to a governor, it gets a lot of exposure, and I'm sure people will remember that. But I also hope they'll remember all the things that we did to improve our schools, to improve our business climate,
and we're going
to move Ohio forward for the 21st century.
The Supreme Court yesterday said that you would retain your law license. What is not clear to me, though, do you want to go back and practice law? What do you imagine happening after January 8th? Well, when you wake up on January 9th.
I really got into government at the same time I got into law. I really like public policy. I like serving the public. So I really did not have a strong intention ever to go back into the practice of law. My first job was as a school teacher in East Africa in the Peace Corps. I hope to go back and do some teaching, perhaps at the college level. I want to stay very active in school reform initiatives. I want to be in Ohio, Southern Ohio, could be Cincinnati, Dayton, Columbus. We're not sure exactly where yet. I want to stay active too at the national level on education reform issues, because I believe those are what really are going to determine the success of our country and our youth in a competitive world economy.
From the very beginning, you set education reform out as, if not your top priority, certainly one of your top priorities, beginning with reading and then moving through just this past week to the passing of the Ohio Core. Taking the long view first, I want to talk about the core in a minute, but sure. Taking the long view, what do you think's been accomplished?
Well, first of all, we've improved funding of schools. We've closed the gap between rich and poor districts. We have about $2.2 billion more going into state-aided schools than before I took office. We have the largest and I think the most ambitious school rebuilding program in the entire country.
Construction program.
School construction program, yeah, including here in Cincinnati. We're building schools all over Ohio with a lot of state aid and a lot of state support. But I think the most important change we made on education is what happens inside the classroom. We didn't have any standards when I took office. We now have high academic standards. We're holding schools accountable for results based on those standards. We're seeing a lot of student improvement. We have twice as many kids, for example, in Cincinnati, reading at grade level in elementary school than when I took office. And that kind of progress is occurring across the state. More kids are passing our graduation test, which is now at a higher level. It's at 10th grade level. And of course, we need to continue to improve that through more rigorous core curriculum. But we're making a lot of progress by focusing the schools on academic achievement and making sure that our kids are better prepared for college or a good job in today's economy.
You mentioned the additional funding that has gone in, both on the capital side with buildings, but also on the operational side. But at the same time, there's been a series of Supreme Court decisions saying that the whole way that we fund schools is broken. Is putting a little bit more money in various places, a little bit more, that's not fair. Putting more money in, is that sufficient, or do we have to change the system ultimately and get away from local property tax voting?
Well, Dan, I think through the actions we've taken, we've really addressed about 80% of that Supreme Court decision. Much of that was about school buildings, the deplorable conditions of buildings across Ohio. We're addressing that. A lot of it was about the gap between wealthy and poor districts. We're closing that gap. Doesn't mean our system is perfect, and we still have a system, as you point out, that is very dependent on local property taxes and tax levies. Right. And schools still do not have a reliable, predictable source of revenue with regard to the local monies that grows with inflation. We tried to address that. We had a task force that looked at that, came up with some good ideas, very hard to sell. So I wish Governor-elect Strickland the best luck and good fortune in solving this to voters. It's very tough. Either you have to allow local property taxes to grow without a vote, which isn't popular at all.
Allow them to grow with inflation and pull back.
Without going back to the voters, which isn't popular. Or you have to really shift the burden of funding tremendously to the state level, to state tax sources, which requires a very large tax increase at the state level at a time when we're trying to compete with other states and stay competitive for business investment. So it's a challenge.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that has just passed within the last week here, as the legislature has been wrapping up, is the Ohio Core program. It was something that you laid out at the beginning of 2006, calling for much higher standards in terms of math, English, science education that a student has to pass before they get admitted to universities. What do you think is going to be the result of that, and why did you push so hard for that?
Well, number one, Dan, I hope we can stop giving all these remedial courses when kids get to college right out of high school. It's shocking that 4 out of 10 of our high school graduates who go right to a 2 or 4 year college in Ohio are enrolled in remedial math or remedial English. So we need to address that, make sure these kids are prepared. Same comment from employers. Most of the jobs today, the good jobs, require greater skills, computer skills, technology skills. So we have to encourage our kids to take more rigorous courses in high school, be more challenged, a little more math and science, not always popular, but the challenge I think there is good teaching. So the Ohio Core is designed to make sure that when a student graduates from high school, they are well prepared for college courses without remediation and well prepared to succeed and learn in a good entry-level job.
Your critics on this have argued two things. One is that this is focusing on the back end, the high school, without doing enough up front in the elementary school. And the other thing is, and I think these are related, so I'll just lay both of them out at the same time, is that this is an unfunded mandate. This is more demands on the schools, on teachers, having to hire higher level teachers, math and science teachers, which are hard to find anyway, and yet there's no more state money to go with this. What do you say?
Well, first, we're making enormous progress, as I said, in helping more kids learn how to read and do math early on, because we do have high standards and we are holding schools accountable for results. Secondly, there are about 4 years before the Ohio Core really kicks in and becomes a requirement for university admission. So we're talking about the 5th graders that will start this fall, so there's an opportunity for the schools to focus on getting these kids ready to succeed in that high school curriculum. And finally, we have funded already about $30 million into building the teacher capacity to deliver the Ohio Core. We're not talking about more courses to graduate, same number of credits, 20 credits, but more rigorous coursework, which means we do need to upgrade the skills of teachers, and that's why we are putting $30 million into that process right now, so we can upgrade teacher skills, attract some mid-career people back into teaching, and make sure we can deliver the math and science content that is necessary to prepare our kids for success today.
You know, in preparing for this, I stumbled across, and I'm sure you know it already, a new report by the National Center on Education and the Economy, Tough Choices, Tough Times. Their argument is, and you know, after 8 years of working on this reform, I want to ask you this question. Their argument is, it's time to move away from all of these little efforts to fix things, all of which are good, but we just got to get a whole new system, that you can't fundamentally change the system. States have been doing all of these things, but the rest of the world just keeps moving forward faster than we are. After 8 years as governor, committed to better education, what do you think about that?
I think we need to do just a far better job of preparing kids in the present system. That includes the straight college track. It also includes, by the way, you know, the career preparation track as well, which today needs to be very rigorous. Our Ohio Core proposal is tailored to fit with the career tech preparation track as well as the college academic track. So it provides for flexibility, but we're just not getting the job done compared to other countries today. Our kids are following behind in math and science, and that's the way the job market is going. We're losing jobs today to India and China because they have the talent and we don't.
So you think the basic system is still savable?
Well, we need to work on choice is good, competition is good in our school system. We're also working on redesigning the high school to create smaller schools within schools throughout the state of Ohio, so you can have more intimate, effective contact between the teachers and the students, so that the high school experience really results in preparing a kid well for future.
My introduction linked your family's long history with the Republican Party. As you leave office, how do you see the state of the Republican Party, tough election year, both in Ohio and then in the United States? How would you characterize where things are?
Well, I think in Ohio, you know, we're the party that's responsible for the latest tax reform plan. We're bringing down the income tax. We've totally revised our business taxes to make Ohio more competitive. We've cut our personnel at the state level by 3,500 people, so we're really tightening our belt a lot. I'm leaving the state in very good financial condition for Governor-elect Strickland. Balanced budget. We have a very good credit rating, and we have about $1 billion in the rainy day fund. Fiscal responsibility at the state level has been very important to us. I think that's one of the challenges at the national level, but the president has also been very strong on the tax issue, which I think is an important issue from a competitive standpoint. So it was a tough year, a tough election. The Iraq War had a lot to do with that. Some of the challenges we had in Ohio had a lot to do with that. But I think that
the voters didn't see it that same. I mean, you just ticked off the things that you're proud of, and you think.
Sure.
But the voters didn't see that presentation, that list was enough, and not just even to hold on, but they reversed. Doesn't the Republican Party face some really serious issues here?
I think the Republican Party does, Dan, but so does the whole country. You know, we've got major economic challenges in not just Ohio, but throughout the entire Midwest. We're challenged with competition from overseas as never before. India and China have emerged as major economic superpowers. So we've got to be more competitive, and we've got to be smarter, and that means, you know, invest in education and improve our business climate, which is what we have done. I believe the same applies to the national level, and I'd like to see a little less focus on issues like the war nationally and more focus on competitive issues. How do we compete with the rest of the world when you talk about talent and skill and innovation and technology? Because we're losing our competitive edge. That makes people uncertain, unhappy about the economy, unhappy about the direction of the country because they don't have a secure economic future. So we need to prepare everyone for that secure economic future. I think that's the challenge the Republican Party faces. I think the war has been a huge distraction from that goal. That's my own view on it, and I hope the president in the last 2 years can somehow address the war issue, which is a tough one, and at the same time focus Ohio on our competitive, focus the country, excuse me, on our competitive economic posture.
Governor, I'm out of time. Thank you very much. I know you're talking about teaching. I hope you still think of Southwest Ohio as your home, and hope to see you back here and interact in other ways.
Thanks,
Thank
Dan.
you very much.
It's been a pleasure to be with you. Thanks so much.
Stay tuned. After the break, an investigative report that raises questions about Harmony Community School. Welcome back. During 2006, Jeff Hirsch has prepared a series of investigative stories about Harmony Community School. He has looked at academic performance, funding issues, and in recent reports, the way Harmony transformed its interscholastic athletic program. Jeff has continued to probe, and this morning reports on issues concerning Harmony's decision to admit out-of-state athletes to the school, a school that is supported by Ohio taxpayers.
Smoking. The basketball players at Harmony Community School last season were smoking hot on the court. But we've uncovered something else which may be smoking, a potential smoking gun, which based on our investigation suggests many of those Harmony athletes had no right to play sports, take classes, get credits, earn diplomas, no right to attend Harmony whatsoever.
Where we have a school now, you know, pretty much acting like a minor sports league. And this is wrong.
The issue, whether more than 24 out-of-state athletes Harmony brought in pursuit of sports glory were legal Ohio residents.
He's here because we wanted him with you.
Right. Yeah, he came from Dallas. I brought him in to replace Phil Jones. Because Phil ended up going to Laurinburg. Supposed to might have our hands on another 7-footer from Africa. That's one of our guys out at Tennessee Tech's helping us out with. We might have by week's end.
This all started last fall when Harmony enrolled the out-of-state basketball and football players, purchased a $300,000 apartment building where the athletes could live, and charged them below market rent. Harmony said these out-of-staters then instantly became Ohio residents, eligible for free tuition.
And if they were Ohio residents, that made Harmony a privately operated but taxpayer-financed charter school eligible for more than $5,000 per student in state aid, well over $100,000.
But we found a problem. Ohio law says when students over 18 years old move to Ohio and do not live with a parent or guardian, they have to support themselves by their own labors. In other words, have a job in order to be an Ohio resident. That's what the law says, but that's not what Harmony said.
Here is what Harmony did say in our March 2006 investigation when we questioned school director Deland McCullough.
As an adult, you do not have to prove how you support yourself. That is not this school's business.
Harmony said the same thing to a Department of Education investigator who wrote to Harmony. You indicated that presently you do not know how many of these students are working and have no reason to investigate. Your stated position was that the students in question are legal residents and should be counted for payment.
But that state investigator said no way. As many as 29 Harmony students were not legal Ohio residents. There was no evidence at all of self-support. So no state money.
Then, finally, faced with the loss of thousands of dollars after fighting and denying for almost the entire school year, Harmony sent the state a letter received May 18th, just 2 weeks before the end of school, saying Harmony now had proof of self-supporting status, including affidavits swearing Cincinnati residency and letters from employers.
And now the potential smoking gun, documents which suggest the students in question were not self-supporting when they came to Harmony, were not self-supporting for month after month after month while they attended Harmony, and which suggest the students only got jobs after Harmony got caught trying to turn out-of-staters into Ohioans.
This letter is from state investigator Fred Ross. Ross inspected Harmony's documents in June 2006. He found letters from employers, but none of the employer's statements stated any specific number of hours the student worked or stated any specific amount of wages paid. They were on company stationery, but no W-2 or wage statements were included.
So, no hours, no amount of money. The job could have been minimum wage for 1 hour a week. Is that self-supporting? And significantly, no evidence of when the job started, of how long the students had been working. They could have had jobs for just a couple of weeks.
Did they go back and look and see if the individual was in fact self-supporting for the entire year, including the time that they were participating in school during the day and then athletics after school?
These guys get up, they come to school, they have study tables. Their time is taken up from 8 in the morning all the way till probably around 9 o'clock at night.
It seems to me that just the education during the day and the extracurriculars after school would be full-time by itself.
There's more. Harmony's sample affidavit swearing residency was not signed until May 5, 2006, saying I am self-supporting. But nothing saying I was self-supporting in, say, September 2005 or October, November, December, January, February, March, April, almost the entire school year. Not only that, one of the athletes, football player Jamie Stewart from East Chicago, Indiana, tells Local 12 he and 2 of his out-of-state friends never had jobs at all, and his family paid the rent, hardly self-supporting.
So based on everything we've seen, it seems that the Harmony athletes in question were not legal Ohio residents for most of the school year. And if that's the case, should Harmony get state funding for that period? And if the students were not legal Ohio residents, they had no right to be here. Should their diplomas count, their credits?
And what is the Ohio Department of Education doing about this? Well, in a letter to Harmony sent in July 2006, ODE higher-ups concluded Harmony's evidence of self-sufficiency was satisfactory, and state funding for the students in question, which had been frozen, should flow again. But effective back to when? September 2005? May 2006? Well, Associate Superintendent Paulo De Maria tells Local 12 Harmony gets to decide, and ODE will accept whatever Harmony says unless somebody else provides evidence to the contrary. De Maria says he would apply the same standard to other public schools. But Harmony is not like other public schools. Nobody else brought in 24 athletes and rented them rooms in a $300,000 school-owned apartment building at below market rent. Plus, many of the athletes in question, the ones ODE says are Ohio residents, have finished their time at Harmony and are now gone from Ohio.
I don't think this is what the legislature intended, and so I think this is just sort of really a distortion of what the law was set up to do.
At least one state legislator agrees with that.
Well, we've set up an accountability system that does not hold anybody accountable.
State Senator Teresa Fetter, a charter school critic, says a bipartisan legislative investigation is needed, and the Legislative Office of Educational Oversight, eliminated in a budget cut, should be restored.
The Department of Education has done nothing. The State Board of Education has done nothing. The governor has done nothing.
But one organization is not giving up. In a scathing letter to the Department of Education, the Cincinnati public school system, which challenged the Harmony residency in the first place, calls the job evidence ODE accepted from Harmony woefully incomplete and flawed. And there's more. If the vague, nonspecific, and redacted form affidavit sent to CPS was considered satisfactory documentation, then please be advised that we have a very, very different definition of satisfactory.
We will keep pursuing it because there are too many questions about this whole situation.
And what does Harmony say? Well, school director Deland McCullough refused to tell Local 12 when the athletes actually started their jobs. McCullough said, "We provided the Department of Education everything we had. We provided them what they asked for," which to critics may well be the problem. If you don't ask for much, you won't get much. So Cincinnati Public is asking for more, and the challenge to Harmony athlete residency is still alive.
So there's lots of unanswered questions, and I'm really surprised by the department's actions.
Jeff Hirsch, Local 12.
Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday mornings this past year. I hope you will continue to watch in 2007, which again looks like a critical year for our region. Meet the men and the women who are shaping our community for the future. Have a good new year. Thank you.